For families living in poverty, securing safe, affordable housing is likely to be one of the biggest problems in their lives. Evictions in New Jersey, overwhelmingly due to non-payment of rent, have been on the rise since 2006, with over 130,000 eviction cases opened in the first 3 quarters of 2015. In areas of concentrated poverty, such as Essex and Camden counties, there are just 25 to 40 affordable and available housing units for every 100 extremely low-income families that need a place to stay. The stress of experiencing a housing crisis also puts families at a greater risk for involvement with the Division of Child Protection and Permanency, which was formerly called DYFS.
It's not just, one family situation. It's really seeing kind of over and over again, not just in one community or one county, but seeing that this situation and this story is replicated from county to county.
Because these are often very poor families, the way that they need to resolve the housing crisis includes a lot more contact with government agencies. So they have to go to welfare, and they have to go to housing authority, and they have to go to housing court.
I called in DYFS because I was in the street with my kids.
A string of misfortunes led Jacqueline and her family to become homeless in 2011. A lapse in SSI benefits caused her to fall behind on her rent, and her landlord filed for eviction. By the court date, Jacqueline had resolved her SSI issue, but it was too late, and she lost the hearing. Homeless, she went to DYFS for help keeping her family together. But DYFS was unable to help because there was no space in the crowded family shelters. She rented the cheapest hotel room she could find, but her children broke out in painful rashes from a bug infestation. Friends and families helped briefly, but it got crowded and tense, and she was asked to leave. She again turned to the state for help.
They told me that they couldn't put me in a family shelter because it was packed, that they was gonna put me back in the hotel where I was staying at. And I told them that I don't wanna go back to that hotel because that hotel had a lot of bugs and everything. So they was like, okay then, so we're gonna remove them and we're gonna replace them until you get yourself on your feet and get yourself together.
When parents have their kids at home and they are under a lot of economic stress and they lose their housing, or something changes about their housing and they can't stay there, that's an enormous stress on the family. If you're presenting at your worst because you're really, really stressed out, and you and your partner are blaming each other, or you're all alone and you really need your kids to kind of act right, and your kids are really stressed out, then you're going to be more likely to seem like a person who's generally unstable. And there's also a lot of bias against people who are living so precariously that they would lose their housing. And so there can be a way of looking at that family that they don't have what it takes to be parents. But if you're only looking at the small picture and you're forgetting that there's a big picture of drastic housing shortage and instability right now, then you're not being fair to that family.
I was hoping for them to help me and put me in a family shelter, not to remove my kids, because I think they did the wrong thing to remove my kids. If I reached out for help, it's for them to help me, not remove my kids.
Affordable housing, across the state is a real issue in terms of what the supply is. And so for our families who tend to reside in areas where poverty is a challenge, we see that our families will struggle with housing instability. And so for us as an organization, we recognize that housing is not and should not ever be an indicator of a parent's ability to be a good parent. And so for us, we work very hard to help supplement a parent's income. We work very hard to identify where we can pay for rent for a period of time and assist a family in identifying longer-term resources to assist with housing stability. But it is a challenge.
Parents are expected to actively resolve parenting deficiencies by going through evaluations, treatments, therapies, educational programs, but housing instability requires a different approach. Because of the shortage of affordable housing in New Jersey, it's unrealistic to expect families who struggle with housing issues to resolve them without the direct provision of support. That might be back rent or security deposit or a crib. It might be helping a family to secure ongoing rental assistance or providing transportation to move in with relatives in another state. A direct outlay of financial resources to resolve housing problems can save the state money by avoiding the much larger costs associated with placing children in foster care.
Every time I used to go see them on Monday, they used to sit there and cry. It was hard for them to get them back in the van, to take them back where they were staying at and everything. I used to cry, not sleep, not eat, because my kids wasn't there for me. You know, it's hard for a mother not having their kids.
If economic instability is a big factor in why a family is facing removal, it makes sense to really deal with the economic instability by supporting that family temporarily and helping them get on track to being able to eventually pay for their needs rather than to place a child in foster care. It's expensive to place kids in foster care. It's traumatic to children to go into foster care. You create new problems in a family by putting a kid into foster care. If there's something that you could do to keep the child at home, and especially if it's something as simple as providing money, then that would be the way to spend money.
To help provide housing, New Jersey commenced an experimental, limited pilot program in a few counties, established in Essex and now being extended to Monmouth and Passaic counties.
What we have developed within the department is a program called Keeping Families Together. New York City has a similar program, and this particular program supports these families in that there is a case management component to it, so that they have an individual who is working with the family, who is figuring out kind of what their goals are in terms of what they want to address, what they need to address, and kind of what the time frame is to get that accomplished. And what we want to do is take the strain of having to worry about where they're going to live.
Even when a child's removal is unrelated to housing, reunification of families is often delayed by housing issues. Removal of children from the home often leads to loss of public benefits and child support. When a family loses its home due to the reduced income, the shortage of affordable housing makes finding any home difficult and makes finding a home large enough for the children to return exceptionally challenging. Housing problems should be anticipated and addressed as soon as possible.
A lot of the parents that I've worked with, especially in the last few years, have had a really long lag at the end of their case where they've completed everything. The agency is more or less ready for the child to go home, and the only barrier left in the case is housing. And I see a couple of things. First, the agencies don't start the process of finding housing that's good enough for the whole family before they get to that point. So there's a sense that we don't know what's going to happen with this family, and we'll get all the way to the point that they're ready to reunify, and then we'll take it seriously that they're going to reunify and help them look for housing. But housing itself takes a really long time, and so if you're really planning on reunification, you should be planning on a parallel path for there to be housing ready by the time you get to the point where you'd have maybe overnight visits. And that means really starting the housing process much earlier.
They were out of my custody for about 1.5 years.
DCP&P became involved in Latifah's family as a result of her addiction. She had been living with family prior to her children being removed, but was required to find her own place to live when the time came for them to be returned.
I completed the program, but it still wasn't enough for me to get my kids back. I have to have my own residence, and that's something I didn't have, so that did delay the case. Like, I had the apartment, but I wasn't actually like in it yet. I had the keys, the lease and stuff like that, but she said we will not do the unsupervised visits until you're actually in the apartment. Plus, they had to have something to sleep on. So if I was to go get the apartment, had the place for the kids, but they didn't have nothing to sleep on, still they couldn't come until I had something for them to sleep on.
DCP&P eventually assisted Latifah with obtaining some furniture for her apartment, but the problem delayed reunification by several months.
I think it makes sense that, the government would want to be part of ensuring that kids are really living in spaces that are, comfortable and adequate, but it's more important, I think, for parents and kids to be together, for kids to have more time with their parents and to live with the people that, love them and are going to be committed to them for the rest of their lives, than to have them be in just the right space. And sometimes the requirements are far above how poor people really live in our country and sort of deny that reality. And they also reflect like a really first world way of thinking. Like, kids can't share a bedroom with their mom, even for an overnight, or that, 2 adults and 2 children can't fit into a 1-bedroom apartment for a single night.
They told me that I needed a 3-bedroom apartment. It was hard because the only thing I was receiving was $700 when the kids was removed. So I couldn't look for a big apartment. And average for an apartment is about $1,100, $1,200 for 3 bedrooms.
Assistance from the state must be tailored with an understanding of the complex challenges faced by low-income families, including recognizing and working with the resources available through extended family. Shared quarters with extended family may seem uncomfortable, but for children it's often a better option than shared space in a shelter or removal to live with strangers.
I understand, I don't blame nobody for what I done. What I done is what I done. I own up to it. I made the mistake about it. Now I'm learning from it, you know what I'm saying? So I'm going to do what's necessary, what I have to do to get my kids back. But what my deal is, and I don't understand why, if I had a family member with enough space or an uncle with enough space, family member period with enough space, that agreed that, okay, if your kids can come back home with you, I will allow you to stay, which I had not 1 family member, not 2 family members, but 3 and 4 and 5 family members that cared enough to say, okay, well, yeah, your kids can come stay here with me if that's gonna get your kids back, but they wasn't having that.
Having experienced homelessness as a child, I know that children with housing instability live in constant fear that someone, especially a service provider, may report the family to a child protection agency, that the trauma of losing a home may snowball into the loss of parents and even siblings if they're placed in foster care. Homelessness is not itself child abuse. Children and families who struggle with housing instability must be provided assistance to secure and maintain housing. Jacqueline and Latifah resolved their housing issues with the support of rental assistance programs, other government benefits, and caseworkers providing resources like furniture.
As soon as they came back through that door, they started hugging me, they started giving me kisses. Oh, mommy, I'm glad you came home. In the beginning, they was upset, they was hurt because they thought that I give them up. Until I sat down with them and I explained the situation to them, what was going on and everything. Mommy didn't do that. Mommy loves you. And little by little, they understand. With the help of therapy, the psychiatrist and everything.
It's like giving birth again, It's like really giving birth again, because it's like when you first give birth and you see what you created, and for them to be absent of your life, and to get them back, it's like a whole new world. It's a whole new world.